as well. And my question is how we can then share the link with the audience if they want to watch us live on YouTube.
They may have to just search for us on YouTube, to be honest,
Yeah.
because I can't quite see how I can put something into. There is a back channel, isn't there? Can I do one for everyone on the call? I don't think I can actually.
Yeah, I don't
No,
know.
I can't. So I don't think we can get it straight off Clubhouse. So if people do want to see the live stream, if you go onto YouTube, you can find Agile Coaching Mastery. There's a Zoom link as well if you really wanted to join us, but then Raz would put your face up and you'd be on the videos forever. So maybe you don't want to do that. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, very good.
Okay. All good to go? Are we doing live? Are we live?
Yes, you're live. And I'm sharing the link on LinkedIn as well.
The link on LinkedIn is on the LinkedIn. Yeah. So people could join there as well. Yep. Cool. Okay. Well, we're ready to go then. Good to go. Good to go. Good to go. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good grief. It's another podcast from Agile Coaching Mastery.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Agile Coaching Mastery podcast and YouTube channel, brought to you by the Agile Coaching Mastery crew. Our crew consists of Agile coaches from around the world who record the podcast for an international audience, free of time zones. You can listen when you want. We do this to help increase the skills, knowledge, and experience across the Agile coaching community, and it's for free. Every week we explore another part of this wonderful Agile coaching landscape. Each episode is recorded live and unscripted on Friday. Let's join the crew and their friends for this week's episode.
Thank you very much. So before we actually get into it, I do need to do a name check. I got contacted by someone who I was one of my very first ever people I worked with on Agile. She was a PM and I was helping her become a Scrum Master many years ago, Louise Dorber. Louise, thank you for reaching out to me. She heard the podcast, recognized my voice and wanted to say hello. So Louise, hi, welcome. Great to have you along. She's not on the actual Clubhouse, but she gets the podcast, so that's great. Thank you very much. So with that in mind, today we start a series on psychological safety. And I wonder if I could encourage anyone on the Clubhouse audience who wants to come up and ask questions or give their contributions. The real expert amongst our crew on psychological safety is actually Ricardo, who isn't here today because he's unwell. And I'll quote the text. How many flights did he say he'd had in the last 3 weeks?
Many.
I can't remember. It was a big number.
18.
6 flights. Yeah, 6. So anyway, he's not feeling very well, so that's why he's not with us. Yep. So Ricardo, we offer you our thoughts and sort of spiritual hugs that I hope you feel better next week. So psychological safety. Shall I start, Rasoul? Do you want to bring any thoughts out to start with?
No, let's start.
Yeah, so I think one of the big early points that came out to start understanding this, it's really, you have an idea that psychological safety is a good thing, but it started out not as a good thing. It started out as a thing to do with efficiency. So some of the early points on this were, how do teams become super good at being efficient, like storming, forming, norming, and performing? How do they get there? Mm-hmm. How is that analysed? And Jeff Sutherland did some work on this. You can look this up on Hyper-Performant Teams, where he talked about how teams become very performant over time. His original work started with how efficient people are, and then he turned it into how efficient teams are. Lots of data research. If you meet Jeff Sutherland and ask a question like that, out comes his laptop with statographs of how it worked, and he's a data scientist, so all that came out. And he talked about how to get teams to become more efficient together. That was his main point, with the basic idea of, if you can do twice the work in half the time, isn't that good? And that became, by the way, the name of a book that he wrote with his son JJ, do twice the work in half the time. The next big issue on this was a piece of research done by Google. Now, the project was called Aristotle, and it looked at what makes teams very, very efficient, and it made several points about safety. It is worth pointing out that that project wasn't analysing teams. It was a data science project to look at the data that everyone else was putting on. So that's what would be called a secondary research piece. So, they looked at what everyone else was saying and drew it together. And they came up with the idea that, the biggest thing that creates the improvement in productivity in teams is that they feel psychologically safe. Now, I'm interested in that word psychological. So, Raz, maybe I can ask you this because I know you're multilingual. Does that word psychological come across in all the other languages correctly? Because I'd heard on a previous chat with someone that that word, there could be better ways of saying that. I remember Jeffrey Dowes, who's written Agile Conversations, said that to me once.
Yeah. In the language, I'm actually coming from the Farsi, the Persian language. We don't use psychological. We just say safety and feeling safe. I think and when we call it feeling, it comes back to the innate feeling we have, probably psychological or physical. But there is an element of feeling there, definitely. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So I guess I'd like to ask: are we okay using the phrase psychological safety as opposed to just the word safety for what we want is an international audience, isn't it?
Yeah. I would like to twist that question and answer a question with another question, probably also asking the audience what they think or feel about what's the wrong with calling it psychologically safe or psychological safety. So what's in this the term psychological? What's the nuance there that probably bothers some people or not bother some people?
Okay. Well, if you're interested in that, we have got
Yeah.
Sunesh who's going to come up on stage and talk to us. I just encourage you as we do this, if you want to come and contribute, ask a question, just put your hand up. Next to the Leave Quietly is a put your hand up. Sunesh. I do apologise, Sunesh. Welcome along. Welcome to the journey.
Welcome, Suresh. Sunish.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Thanks, Russ. Just want to contribute a couple of things, couple of points comes
Sure,
to
go
my
ahead.
mind when we talk about psychological safety, right? Uh, so uh, Basically speaking, we all know that psychological safety is a phrase that is being referred to a team where uh, a group of people, right? A team that is they kind of they express their ideas, they feel safe within that team, right? So mentally they feel safe. uh, so uh, just touching about the question which Russ asked, right? Why it is psychological safety, or why that psychology word there. So uh, it's all about something which we have in our mindset, right? So we say mindset, right? How our mindset in that team, how we speak up, um, how we behave in that team, and the right we can replace the psychological with the mindset, but psychological is the right word because it's something which is in your inner mind, right?
So
So
you could say mindset safety. That's what you're saying,
maybe, yeah.
Sunesh. Okay. Yeah.
If you really want to look for another word, right? So what
Yeah.
I feel is that mindset is the right word, right? So this is what I
Okay.
think. Right. The second thing is that often we do tend to confuse with the psychological safety and the trust. So actually, these are two different entities, but they are really closely related to each other, right? Uh,
Well, I've heard people say psychological safety is just trust, and you're quite right. I think it can be confusing.
yes, yes, yes. So trust is something which uh, we kind of okay, I trust you, or I trust the team. That means I really depend upon that person, right? I believe that person. I have no doubts. I mean, I'll always give the benefit of doubt to that person or that to that team. So that's what trust is. Now, psychological safety is again the same benefit of doubt, but how I am getting received, right? So how others, that group of people, which I refer to as psychological safety, how they trust me, or how they treat me, or how they give me that benefit of doubt to me when I take a risk, right? So that's what psychological safety is. So that's my feeling, right? My feeling on how others will give me the benefit of, of doubt when I take a risk. That's psychological safety. The trust is how I give that benefit of doubt to a group of people, or maybe a person when I take a risk, right?
Okay, so if I've understood your thesis here, Sunesh, thank you for sharing it. Is the trust is about what you give to others.
Yes,
Psychological safety is more a team attribute. You feel that within a team environment. Would that be a fair summary?
yes, yes,
Okay,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
that's very useful.
Right.
Carry on.
So just one more, I'll just conclude with one more point. The third thing is that about how we measure the psychological safety in a team, in a simple terms, right? So what we can watch out for. So this is something I watch out for when I go into a team or when I observe a team on whether they are in psychological safety. I count the number of questions that is being asked in that team, irrespective of junior, senior experience, CEO, whoever it is in that group of people who are talking, how many questions being asked, how many questions being raised, and how that questions being treated and listening, right? Basically the questions that is being asked, right? That's
Yeah,
really
you're
important.
you're sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You're saying if a team is asking an awful lot of questions of each other all the time, that's a good sign. A good sign. And if they're not asking each other questions, that's a bad sign. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay, Sunesh, thank you very much for your contribution. That's quite helpful. I see Jeff has also put his hand up. Thank you very much, brave Jeff. Welcome on the stage on Clubhouse. You're live as well on the live stream and on the podcast. Thank you very much, Jeff, for coming up. As
Thanks,
a friend
Ian.
of mine says, you always bring gold. What's your gold today, Jeff?
So I'm new to the clubhouse. So you hear me well?
Yeah, we're fine, I think. Just check with
Perfect.
Raz as well. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing me up. And yes, I agree to the question was, do I agree to the term psychological safety? Yes, I do agree because I come from a company where we have QHSE at the highest level, right? So I could go into an office and feel safe. Or there is everything. There is fire safety. There is everything out there. Alarms in place, securities in place. That's safety, one aspect of it. But when I go to teams, when I kind of do my own kind of safety audit in teams, if you do not have a psychological safety, you would have members not opening up, fearing how would, I mean, if they make a mistake, how it's going to be perceived, right? I handle teams across geographies. Different cultures have different way, and they brought up in that way where mistakes are differently encouraged or punished upon, you can say, right? They're coming from different aspects of it. But when you're coming on to you graduate and you're coming on to a team in an organization, you have a global culture. There you need to build psychological safety where members can bring up tough issues, bring up issues. Are they being rejected by someone else, right? Is anybody in the team deliberately acting in a way that undermines your efforts? So these things are my red flags that I will look for and to coach and to make sure that there is a psychological safety in the team.
Well, Jeff, thank you very much. Again, if you're interested in contributing, just put your raise your hand on the card. That'll come up. So I think that's really useful stuff, Jeff. Thank you. I love your questions as well, by the way. And the idea of tough issues as well, questions which are tough. I think my observation of the root of what is psychological safety must be people feel it's okay to make mistakes
Correct.
and people feel it's okay to challenge. I guess that's probably the two that I would think about as
Correct.
statements. If we start with that as a platform, Raz, or would you change that definition?
No. You put it exact the way I wanted it.
Yeah, people feel free to make mistakes. nobody likes to make mistakes, but it doesn't. You're not shot if you make a mistake, and people feel free to challenge. So I guess what I'd like to ask people on the call as well is just a little bit on.
Ian,
Sorry about the
can I
background
link you to
noise.
something?
Yeah, sorry about the background noise, everyone.
Yeah. So thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Sunesh. Two very great observation and input. And I want to link it to Amy Edmondson work on psychological
Yes.
safety in her book, I think Fearless Organization, Arakan. So she mentioned that the psychological safety is not being polite or nice or very, a fabulous person, just bubbly person going around and make people laugh. It's about giving candid feedback. Sometimes those feedbacks that really not hurt people personally, but it's usually it's not they're not giving because people not feeling good about giving those things and raising those things, as you mentioned, Jeff, and also openly admitting mistakes, which means that they can learn from it. So yeah, this is what also Amy Edmondson's mentioned in her book.
You mentioned, in fact, Jeff Dowes, who's written Agile Conversations with Squirrel. When we had a chat on this a while ago, he just referred to Amy's book all the time as the definitive work on it. And certainly, on LinkedIn, you get an awful lot of visual summaries of what psychological safety means. They are all adapting to various things. I tried to summarize them into the 2 words, mistake and challenge. The definite reference is Amy's work, clearly. She puts it very, very well. And not just in some summary, but in some great detail. So the book is Amy Edison, Fearless Organization. We should mention that. So
Yes. And also Teaming, the other book.
another one of Amy's books?
Yes, Teaming.
Teaming.
Yep, correct.
Do you know, I don't know why I don't know that. I have a vague feeling that Jeff mentioned it to me in a chat, but I can't remember it now because I vaguely think he said there's 2 books, but I couldn't, you've now put it back in my mind. So I'll put those on my reading list. Don't know what you're like, Raz. I have a reading list of books to get to.
That's a great book because it also talks about how to build that psychological safety within the small piece of the organization, teams. It's an amazing book.
Teaming, okay. Which brings me to what I want to talk about, because the first thing is, and let me rephrase and rewind. There's always an issue to do with what great looks like in any issue, okay? What does great look like in psychological safety? And the first part of great in anything is knowing what it means well. And I think that is partly a sort of narrow and partly a wide definition. So the wide definition, I think, is free to make mistakes, free to challenge.
Yeah.
The depth definition, let me leave that for one side, is definitely what Amy talks about in her book, much better, I think, than that. But so that's the first thing on what great. And then the second thing is, how to get there. And one of those is how do you start your journey? So I remember a team I was once with where, they weren't very communicative and they weren't very open. And the culture was definitely, shall I say, a macho culture? I don't want to be too diminutive of that, but that kind of way of doing things. And I said to the leader of the team, he said, well, they don't really talk when we're on calls. And I went, maybe you can set an example by admitting some failure. That might help them all. I said in a session. And when we had the next session at the start of it, he said, just want to say something to everyone. I think I've got 3 jobs to do at the moment. I don't think I'm doing any of them very well. And, I think I've got to put some effort in, and I've probably got to get rid of one of these jobs. So we're in a transfer situation. People had new jobs and old jobs and all that sort of thing. But he said this, and then I said on the open call, does anyone else feel like that? And everyone went, yeah, we all do. And it really opened up the subject of feeling free to admit mistakes and failures. So what do people think of that story? Raz, what do you think of that story? I'd be interested.
So one thing I really like about bringing psychological safety to teams and organization, or even the dynamic between 2 or 3 people that we have interaction with, is it's contagious. When you just give feedback, people also mimic that, and also they give feedback. It's not a competition, right? So just they feel free, they feel safe, they feel some sort of connected to you when you are exhibiting those behaviors and those mindset that we're talking about, like giving feedback, admitting mistakes, just being vulnerable, talking about and taking risk, like the one that you mentioned. Also, one other aspects of psychological safety is being able to take risks, just feeling safe to take risk. also considering the reward. So it means that you're being out of your comfort zone as a team or as a person, and it's
Yeah.
contagious. This is what I think.
Yes. I mean, another story on this. The chief exec of a large telephone mobile company was drawing the top 400 for a January sort of day away kind of thing, and I was advising one of his team. I wasn't coaching him, but I was coaching one of his direct reports, and they both grabbed me and said, "Is there anything you think we should say as we start this, day?" And I went, I would say something about your appetite for failure. I would say something about that because you want people to break out of this safety. And as far as I remember, this is what he said. And I did love it when he said it. And I wish I'd said these words to him and he was quoting me, but he didn't. And he said this: "I have a tremendous appetite for failure this year. But let me tell you what I mean. I'm very interested in smart failure, where we try something and it doesn't work and we learn and we get on and we move quickly. I'm not interested at all in dumb failure, which is we just keep doing the old things and get surprised by the old bad results." I thought he put that very well, and I think it set a lovely standard for the team. So this is going back to my point, Raz, that the first thing you can do is set example. And as you said, an example becomes infectious, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a practice. It's not something that we can switch on or off. We need to practice it on a constant basis until it becomes a habit.
Lovely. So I think we want to deep delve in this a bit more, but is there anyone who wants to come and contribute, ask questions? So far, I think we've established this point about mistakes and challenge. We've mentioned Amy's books, Teaming and Fearless Organization. Thanks very much to Jeff and Sunesh so far for your contributions. Sunesh, you've come off mic, so I assume you want to, please feel free to add something.
Yes, sorry, and I have to drop now.
Okay. Well, thank you for attending. We love having you here. Come again next time.
Yeah,
We're only going to be going for another sort of 4 or 5 minutes max anyway, so that's okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So does anyone else want to come up and contribute before? Oh, Kimberly, you've come off mic.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't find where to raise my hand. I wanted to ask a question about this because I did a retrospection about this safety last week. And I wanted to know what your thoughts on persons saying they feel safe, they share, whether it's an anonymous poll, how they really feel. But when the results are being, when you're reviewing the results, they kind of cave in and don't want to say why they really place the answer that they did. For example, say they clicked yes, persons make me feel bad when I make mistakes. But when we are talking about that particular question, they say, "Oh no, I didn't mean the team makes me feel bad. I mean, I make myself feel bad." But originally, they really meant the team. How do we handle that and help persons to really feel safe and own the responses that they give without feeling pressure?
Okay. Kimberly, that's a great question, by the way. Let me move to a different example to tell you what I do with that. So we have this thing we sometimes do called Happy Heart, where on a team we suggest to people they can give a scale of 1 to 5 for how they're feeling on various subjects. And what we would do is let's say the H means something, but let's assume I'm talking about mental health. There's one of the categories is enjoy your joy, which is about your mental health and how you're feeling. So let's say we're doing that one, and I say to the team, perhaps everyone could put a number into the chat between 1 and 5 on where they're feeling. 5 is very good, 1 is very bad. And then they do that. So we've got some scores coming in. And then I say, oh, that's really interesting. And I can see, for example, that one of my friends has put a 1 in, and that's a low score for them. And therefore I know there's an issue. And then what I say, now I'm English, and an Englishman left to himself will form an orderly queue of 1. So we're very polite sometimes. And in this matter, my technique is to go, okay, so those scores are in. Would anyone like to comment on their score? And if no one wants to comment, I go, oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing your scores anyway. Let's move on to the next question. And that could be it. But if I say, would anyone like to comment on their score? And someone says, and this actually happened to me. It was a 2. Someone was giving a 2 on this subject, and he went, yeah, the reason I'm giving a 2 is, it's frantic at home. My wife and I are trying to keep our jobs going during kids are at home because it's all COVID. And he really opened up on why he'd given himself a 2, and this opened up a whole thing with the rest of the team saying, "Oh, it's terrible. This, it's a hard time, etc." Actually, I put a 4 in, but I really shouldn't have. That kind of thing happens. But the key there, Kimberly, in that illustration is that moment when I said, "Would anyone like to contribute?" So I didn't insist people contributed. I just said, because here's how psychological safety gets established. It gets established by example, and it gets established by people taking a chance, and people have to decide to take that chance. You can't force it on them. So my honest answer would be, I wouldn't ask someone to comment on a score they gave. I'd open the field to, does anyone want to comment? My view from what you said, and I don't know the full details, is that person probably didn't feel psychologically safe, even though they were doing those answers. And what you need to do in those matters is show by example. Example is the key word. I think Raz said it earlier. An example creates infections. Yourself on you admitting to some kind of downside as well. Raz, what would you think?
Yeah, brilliant advice I think you gave, Ian. I was thinking to one thing, which is usually people, when we are asking them to contribute, they're very good at criticizing the things happening outside of them. And also, as a coach can also ask people and invite people to probe what does that thing that they described has impact on themselves as a team or as a person. So what does it mean personally for them being like this? And also, the other one I can mention is the triangle of trust that you can use as a coach to identify where you can start building that trust, that helping people to feel comfortable sharing or feeling comfortable even being there. So that if I want to just say one of them is authenticity, so being authentic is important. The other one is empathy, so you can either go through authenticity or empathy, or sometimes very robust logic. So sometimes people accept logic, and logic is the most easiest one, because when you have a robust logic, for example, if you don't do this, this happen. So how we can make it better? So creating trust through one of these or all of these angles can help create a build or implement some sort of psychological safety and start building from there.
Yes, thank you guys. Because of the situation, sorry?
Yeah, go ahead, Kimberly. Sorry.
Yeah, I was saying with regards to the situation, yes, a separate team was reviewing the results and saying amongst themselves, why would that person put this? No, we need to go and find that out. And I think they felt pressured as the person that placed it to give a comment, but I personally don't think their comment was being truthful, because they felt like they felt like the team was a team of persons there was ready to gang up on why they felt that way. So so thank you for that. I appreciate that. But I also think too, as well, not that
Yes, I
even when
understand.
they don't feel like the team, like they don't need to say something about their comment, but then know when a team starts to talk about it, wondering persons feel like that added pressure on their shoulders to correct what they may seem as a mistake, to put down how they
Yes.
really feel.
Yes, I understand. In a sense, I think, let's just say you're a scrum master and there's a team. If you take Tuckman's storming, forming, norming, performing model, I teach on this on the Agile Mastery courses I do. I ask a question to the people on the course, how would you use this? And some of them go, well, I'd put it up on the board and I'd ask them where they are on it. I mean, the issue with that is that you've not empowered them to change. You're leading them, but you're not empowering them to change. A much better way is to give them the model and say, how would you like to use this model to improve? And they go, oh, well, how do you go through storming? Oh, well, you go through storming. And what I'm trying to get at there, I think, and it's not an observation of your question at all, Kimberly, it's just the idea that the best way for teams to get safe is if they want to do it to each other rather than have someone doing it to them, I guess. I think that's probably how I'd summarize
Yes,
it.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. Right, we're at time, I think, Raz. Are you okay with we're at time?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so this has been another one of our Agile Coaching Mastery podcasts. Without Ricardo, I feel like I'm missing one of my limbs, but that's okay. We wish him well. Kimberly, thank you for sharing. Jeff, thank you for sharing. Sunesh, thank you for sharing. There'll be little snippets of this put out on LinkedIn. So if you connect to me or Raz, you'll find sort of little snippets of what we do advertised. That starts on Monday. And you can always get hold of all of the podcast back catalogue, including some very nice stuff with Sunil Mundra and Tony Christensen and some of our own ramblings as well. Yeah, you could just get that via Agile Coaching Mastery podcast. You just put that in any podcast platform. YouTube, Agile Coaching Mastery, you'll find the live stream and everything else. Is there anything else I should add there, Raz?
No, all good.
All good. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for contributing. We love you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's it for this week. You've been listening to Agile Coaching Mastery, brought to you by the Agile Coaching Mastery crew. If you want to join the live recording